I tightened my grip on the grocery bags as I pushed the front door open with the spare key. "Olivia," I called quietly. No answer. Instead, angry voices drifted down the hallway. "You have to sign these today," a man insisted. I said I need more time. An older woman answered, her voice strained. My stomach tightened. Olivia had told me her mother couldn't even get out of bed after taking a terrible fall. She said the house was too chaotic for visitors, too stressful for our 8-year-old son to see, and too overwhelming for me to interrupt after long days at work. So why did none of this sound like someone caring for an injured parent? I stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. Then I looked into the dining room. Everything inside me stopped. My wife stood beside her brother Ethan, while two strangers spread stacks of legal papers across the dining table. One wore an expensive suit. The other had a notary's stamp beside an open briefcase. My mother-in-law sat in the middle of them, pale but certainly not bedridden, staring silently at a page someone kept pushing toward her. And my son. My little boy smiled as he carried another folder from the living room. "There you go, Mommy." Nobody noticed me standing in the doorway. Nobody except my mother-in-law. Her eyes met mine. For just a second, the relief on her face told me everything. 3 days earlier, none of this had seemed unusual. My name is Mark Bennett. I'm 39 years old, and I've spent most of my career as a civil engineer solving problems with facts, measurements, and patience. At home, though, I believed something different. I believed trust solved almost everything. Olivia used to tell me that marriages failed the moment spouses started questioning each other. I agreed with her. If she said she was helping someone, I believed her. If she said she needed space, I gave it to her. Suspicion, I thought, only destroyed families. That belief made me easy to deceive. When Olivia called me at work earlier that week, she sounded panicked. "Mom fell down the back steps," she said through tears. "The doctor wants her resting completely. I'm taking Noah over there. He wants to help Grandma." "I'll leave work." "No." Her answer came too quickly. "We've got it handled. Just focus on your project. I'll keep you updated." Every evening after that, I offered to stop by. Every evening she refused. "It's too crowded. Mom's sleeping. The nurse is here. Noah's already asleep." When I suggested a video call, something always interrupted it before her mother appeared on screen. I accepted every explanation. Until this morning. I woke up feeling guilty that I hadn't done more. On my way home from work, I stopped at 3 different stores. I bought groceries, fresh soup, pain medication, flowers, and my mother-in-law's favorite tea. Olivia ignored every phone call during the drive. By the time I reached the house, concern had finally outweighed courtesy. Years ago, after fixing a broken porch railing, my mother-in-law had pressed a spare key into my hand. "Keep it," she'd smiled. "Family shouldn't have to knock in an emergency." I never imagined that simple piece of metal would uncover something far worse than an injured woman. Standing silently in the hallway, I watched Ethan slide another document toward his mother. The suited man pointed to another signature line. My son hurried back into the room, carrying another folder, as though he were helping with an ordinary family chore. Then Olivia leaned over her mother and quietly said, "You don't have any more time." I moved before anyone else noticed me. "Noah," I said softly. My son turned with a bright smile. "Dad." He ran straight toward me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What are you doing here?" "I brought Grandma some things." I kept my voice calm as I glanced back toward the dining room. Olivia was still focused on the papers. Ethan was speaking to one of the men. For a few precious seconds, none of them realized I was inside the house. I crouched beside Noah. Can you help me put these groceries in the kitchen? Sure. He grabbed one of the lighter bags with both hands and happily walked beside me. The moment we stepped into the kitchen, I quietly closed the swinging door. So I asked casually, "What's everybody working on?" Noah carefully placed the groceries on the counter. "Important papers." "What kind of papers?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Mommy said we're helping Grandma finish them before the family causes problems." My heart skipped. "What family?" He frowned. "I don't know." He thought for a moment. "Uncle Ethan said some people only care about Grandma's money." The words landed like a brick. "And what are you helping with?" "I carry the folders." He smiled proudly. "And I bring Grandma water because Mommy says she's tired." He looked up at me. "Am I helping?" I forced myself to smile. "You always help, buddy." He beamed. I knew it. There wasn't a trace of fear in his voice. No suspicion. He genuinely believed he was helping his grandmother recover. That realization hurt almost as much as what I'd seen in the dining room. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Can you stay here for just a minute? I need to talk to your mom." "Okay." He immediately began arranging the groceries on the counter, completely unaware of the storm building only a few rooms away. I walked back into the hallway. This time Olivia saw me. Every bit of color drained from her face. "Mark." Ethan spun around. "What are you doing here?" "I came to check on your mother." Olivia quickly stepped between me and the dining room. "You should have called." "I did." "You should have waited." "I've been waiting for 3 days." The suited man quietly closed one of the folders. The woman beside him reached for her notary seal, but stopped when she sensed the tension. Olivia forced a smile. "Can we talk?" She gently took my arm and led me into the front sitting room before I could answer. The moment the door closed, her expression changed. "What were you thinking?" she whispered sharply. "I was thinking your mother was seriously injured." "She is." I just watched her sitting at a dining table signing legal documents. Estate planning isn't exactly strenuous. So this couldn't wait. "It isn't your business." The words caught me completely off guard. My mother asked me to help. Then why wasn't I told? Because every family doesn't need an audience. I stared at her. "We're married. This is my side of the family." Her tone had become cold, far colder than I'd ever heard. "You don't get to walk in here demanding explanations." Before I could answer, Ethan appeared in the doorway. He folded his arms across his chest. "Everything okay?" Olivia nodded without taking her eyes off me. "We're fine." Ethan looked directly at me. "You finally decided to show up." His voice dripped with contempt. "Funny how you had time once paperwork started." I took one slow step toward him. "I didn't even know paperwork existed." He gave a short laugh. "Sure." Neither sibling looked nervous anymore. Instead, they acted like I was the problem. Like I'd interrupted something I had no right to question. I looked past them toward the dining room. My mother-in-law was still sitting at the table. She hadn't signed another page. She wasn't looking at the lawyer. She wasn't looking at Ethan. She was looking at me. Our eyes met. For only a second. She gave the smallest shake of her head. Then Olivia stepped sideways, blocking my view. "I think it's time for you to leave," she said quietly. "I'd like to speak with your mother. She's exhausted." "Just for 1 minute." "No." "Why not?" "Because she needs rest. She can answer for herself." Olivia's jaw tightened. "Mark, don't make this harder." I glanced toward the kitchen. Noah was humming to himself while unpacking groceries. He had no idea the adults around him were turning into strangers. Starting a fight now would drag him into the middle of it. I couldn't do that to him. Not today. I took a slow breath. Fine. Olivia looked almost relieved. I'll go. Without another word, I walked to the front door. No one followed me. No one thanked me for bringing food. No one asked me to come back later. The door closed behind me with a heavy click. I reached my truck, tossed the flowers onto the passenger seat, and started the engine. Before I could put it in reverse, my phone vibrated. Unknown caller. A new voicemail. Time received. 3 minutes ago. I pressed play. A weak, trembling voice filled the truck. Mark, if you get this, please come back. There was a long pause. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, They won't let me wait. I replayed the voicemail 3 times. Each time, my mother-in-law's voice sounded weaker. Not because she was injured. Because she was frightened. They won't let me wait. Wait for what? I looked back at the house through my windshield. The curtains in the dining room were partially open. Shadows moved behind them. Every few seconds, someone crossed the room carrying another folder. If I marched back inside alone, Olivia and Ethan would simply shut me out again. I needed people they couldn't dismiss. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number of Olivia's Aunt Deanne. She answered on the second ring. Mark, everything all right? I need to ask you something. Of course. Olivia told me everyone was out of town this week. A brief silence followed. I'm sitting in my own living room, Diane replied. Who told you I was out of town? My grip tightened around the steering wheel. So you're home. I haven't gone anywhere. Another lie. Diane, can you come to your sister's house right now? Why? I don't think she's safe. The change in Diane's voice was immediate. I'm leaving now. I made one more call. Olivia's cousin, Robert. He lived less than 15 minutes away. He answered breathlessly. Mark, have you spoken to your aunt this week? No, Olivia said visitors weren't allowed. She lied. What? I need you here. I'm on my way. My final call was the most important. Thomas Reynolds, the attorney who had handled Olivia's parents' estate for years. He answered in his usual calm voice. Thomas Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, it's Mark Bennett. Mark, what can I do for you? I think someone else is trying to transfer my mother-in-law's estate. Silence. Then, someone else. There's another attorney inside the house, a notary too. His tone hardened instantly. Who authorized that? I don't know. Stay where you are. I already left. Go back. There was no hesitation in his voice now. I'll meet you there in 10 minutes. Less than 15 minutes later, 4 vehicles pulled into the driveway almost together. Aunt Diane stepped out first, followed by Robert. Thomas Reynolds parked behind them, carrying a slim leather briefcase. No one wasted time exchanging greetings. We walked to the front door together. I unlocked it with the spare key. Voices stopped the moment we entered. Olivia looked up first. Her face went completely white. Aunt Diane. Robert stared around the room. What is going on? Ethan stood so quickly his chair scraped across the hardwood floor. You people can't just walk in here. Thomas Reynolds ignored him completely. He looked toward the unfamiliar attorney seated beside the paperwork. I'm Thomas Reynolds. He calmly extended his hand. I've represented Mrs. Collins and her late husband's estate for nearly 20 years. The other attorney hesitated before shaking it. I'm David Harper. I wasn't informed another attorney had been retained. Harper glanced toward Olivia. My client requested confidentiality. Thomas's eyes moved to the stack of documents. Interesting. He picked up the top page. I also wasn't informed that substantial property transfers were being executed. Olivia finally found her voice. This is none of your concern. Thomas looked at her without raising his voice. Mrs. Bennet, if these documents alter an estate that I currently administer, they are very much my concern. The room became perfectly still. Aunt Diane walked directly to her sister. She knelt beside her chair. Carol, are you all right? My mother-in-law's eyes filled with tears. She nodded faintly. I'm tired. Diane took her hand. You don't have to do anything today. Before Carol could answer, Ethan slammed his palm against the table. She already agreed. No, Carol whispered. Ethan leaned closer. Mom. I said no. It was the first time she'd raised her voice all afternoon. Everyone froze. Thomas carefully began sorting through the papers already spread across the table. Property deeds, investment account authorizations, transfer forms, some already signed, others waiting. His expression changed almost immediately. He reached into his briefcase and removed a certified copy of the existing estate plan. He silently compared the two sets of documents. One page, then another, then another. Finally, he looked directly at David Harper. These aren't consistent with her existing instructions. Harper frowned. What do you mean? Large portions of the estate have been redirected. Olivia's breathing visibly quickened. Thomas laid both versions side by side. The original plan divides these properties equally. He tapped the new document. This version doesn't. Nobody spoke. He turned another page. The lake house. Another page. The investment accounts. Then another. 3 commercial properties. He slowly looked up. Every major asset has been shifted toward Ethan. The room fell into stunned silence. Olivia suddenly pushed another document toward her mother. Mom. Her voice was no longer gentle. We're almost finished. Just sign this one. Carol looked down at the pen, then slowly pushed it away. I won't. Olivia leaned closer. You have to. Carol lifted her eyes. For the first time all day, there was strength in them. She looked straight at me. I never asked for any of this. I never asked for any of this. The words hung in the room like a crack of thunder. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Ethan shoved his chair backward. Mom, stop this. Carol didn't even look at him. I said enough. Olivia quickly stepped beside her mother. Mom, you're confused. You've been on pain medication all week. I know exactly what I've signed. And what I haven't. Thomas Reynolds calmly gathered the unsigned documents into a separate pile. I think we should pause these proceedings. No, Ethan snapped. We're finishing this today. Thomas looked at him evenly. I don't believe that's your decision. David Harper, the attorney Ethan had brought, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mrs. Collins, he said carefully, if you're withdrawing your consent, we need to stop. Ethan turned on him. What? You said everything was voluntary. It is. Harper looked directly at Carol. Mrs. Collins. She slowly shook her head. I don't want to sign another page. Harper closed his folder. Then this meeting is over. Olivia stared at him in disbelief. You can't just leave. I can, and I will. He stood, placing his pen inside his briefcase. My responsibility is to my client. His eyes settled on Carol. If you're saying you no longer wish to proceed, I can't continue. The notary, who had remained silent for most of the afternoon, finally spoke. I also can't notarize signatures obtained under pressure. She removed her official seal from the table. I'm finished here. Olivia looked from one professional to the other. You've got to be kidding me. Neither answered. Instead, both quietly stepped away from the dining table. Ethan's face darkened. They're overreacting. No, Thomas replied. They're protecting themselves. And your mother. Thomas opened the certified copy of Carol's original estate plan. I'd like everyone to compare something. He laid the original beside the revised documents. The original instructions leave the estate evenly divided among Carol's beneficiaries. He pointed to another page. This amendment transfers the lake house entirely to Ethan. Another page. These investment accounts are reassigned. Another. 3 commercial rental properties. He looked around the room. Every substantial asset has been redirected. Aunt Diane stared at the paperwork. Carol. Tears filled Carol's eyes. I thought. She swallowed. They told me these papers only allowed Ethan to manage things temporarily while I recovered. Thomas slowly shook his head. That isn't what these documents do. They permanently transfer ownership. Carol covered her mouth. Oh God. Olivia immediately knelt beside her. Mom, listen to me. You misunderstood. No. I explained everything. No. You agreed. I trusted you. Those 4 words landed harder than anyone expected. Even Ethan looked away. I felt something tug on my sleeve. I looked down. Noah. He had quietly walked into the dining room without anyone noticing. Dad. I immediately crouched beside him. What is it, buddy? He looked around the room, confused. Why's everybody yelling? Nobody answered. He looked toward his grandmother. Grandma. His little voice trembled. Did I do something wrong? Carol's composure broke completely. She opened her arms. No, sweetheart. He ran to her. She hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. You didn't do anything wrong. You were helping because you have a kind heart. Olivia lowered her eyes. For the first time since I'd arrived, she couldn't look at our son. Thomas quietly stepped into the hallway. When he returned, he spoke in a calm, measured tone. I've contacted the police. Olivia's head snapped upward. You did what? There are credible allegations of elder coercion. That's ridiculous. Perhaps. Then let investigators determine that. Ethan took a step toward Thomas. You can't accuse us. I haven't accused anyone. Thomas interrupted him without raising his voice. I've reported what occurred here. A few minutes later, 2 uniformed officers entered the house. The atmosphere changed instantly. One officer addressed everyone calmly. We're going to speak with each person separately. No one is under arrest, but we'd appreciate everyone's cooperation. The officers guided Ethan into the living room. Another officer asked Olivia to step into the kitchen. Thomas remained with the documents. David Harper handed over copies of everything that had been presented for signature. The notary provided her logbook. One by one, the pieces began falling into place. I stood quietly beside Noah and Carol until an officer approached us. Mr. Bennett. Yes. Mrs. Collins has made one request. I looked toward my mother-in-law. She was sitting quietly in the dining room, her hands folded together. The officer smiled politely. She'd like to speak with you. And only you. I looked at Noah. Can you stay with Aunt Diane for a few minutes? He nodded. Will Grandma be okay? I smiled as reassuringly as I could. She's a lot safer now than she was this morning. He hugged me tightly before walking over to Diane, who immediately wrapped an arm around his shoulders. One of the officers closed the dining room door behind me. The house, so loud only minutes earlier, suddenly became quiet. Carol looked exhausted. Not from her fall. From carrying a secret she could no longer bear. She gestured toward the chair across from her. Sit down, Mark. I did. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, she reached into the pocket of her cardigan and placed something on the table between us. A small brass key. I recognized it instantly. The spare key, I said. She nodded. Do you remember when I gave it to you? I smiled faintly. You said family shouldn't have to knock during an emergency. She returned the smile, though tears quickly followed. That wasn't the whole reason. I frowned. What do you mean? After my husband died, I watched everyone change. She looked toward the closed dining room door. Some people started visiting because they missed me. Her voice caught. Others started visiting because they missed what they thought they might inherit. She slowly shook her head. You never asked me for anything. You fixed broken railings. You shoveled snow. You replaced light bulbs. You brought groceries. You treated me like family even when no one was watching. She slid the key a little closer. I wanted one person I could always trust to come inside if something ever felt wrong. I stared silently at the key. I never imagined I'd actually need it. Carol wiped her eyes. My fall wasn't serious. The doctor told me to rest for a few days. That was all. So why? She answered before I finished. Olivia panicked. I looked at her. Ethan called her the night after I came home. He'd made several terrible investments. He owed more money than he could possibly repay. He convinced Olivia that if the estate could be transferred early, he could save everything. And she believed him. Carol lowered her head. They told me they were preparing temporary financial documents. They said Ethan only needed authority to manage a few things while I recovered. She looked directly at me. I trusted my daughter. Her voice broke. I never imagined she would place permanent transfer papers in front of me. Pieces that hadn't made sense finally fit together. The constant excuses. The ignored phone calls. The refusal to let me visit. Even Noah. Our son, I said quietly. Carol nodded sadly. They had him carrying folders, bringing papers, keeping me distracted. He thought he was helping Grandma. She reached across the table and took my hand. Please don't let him blame himself. He was used. I won't. I promise. A gentle knock interrupted us. Thomas Reynolds stepped inside. I wanted to update you both. Carol straightened in her chair. The officers have collected every document. The unsigned transfers are void. The signed documents will be challenged immediately. He placed a folder on the table. I've already contacted the county recorder to prevent any ownership changes until this investigation is complete. Carol exhaled slowly. So it stopped. Yes. Thomas nodded. Nothing will move until the courts determine exactly what happened. Several weeks passed before everything settled. Investigators interviewed everyone who had been present that afternoon. The attorney Ethan hired cooperated fully after realizing Carol had not understood the documents she was signing. The notary's testimony confirmed that Carol had repeatedly hesitated and appeared uncertain throughout the meeting. The attempted transfers were declared invalid before any property changed hands. Carol immediately revoked every unfinished document. She also executed an entirely new estate plan. This time, every decision was made with Thomas Reynolds present, independent medical confirmation of her capacity, and neutral witnesses. She appointed a professional fiduciary to oversee her finances, so no family member could pressure her again. Ethan's financial problems became his own responsibility. Without access to the inheritance he expected, his carefully constructed plan collapsed. Civil proceedings followed as investigators examined whether his actions amounted to financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Olivia's consequences arrived more quietly. She moved out of our home before the divorce papers were even finalized. The hardest conversation of my life wasn't with my wife. It was with Noah. One evening, after everything had settled enough for him to ask questions, he climbed onto the couch beside me. "Dad." "Yeah, buddy." He looked down at his hands. "Was I helping the bad guys?" I pulled him close. "No. But I carried the papers. Because you trusted your mom." He looked up at me. "I didn't know." "I know." I rested my forehead against his. "Good people can be tricked. What matters is what they do after they learn the truth." He nodded slowly. Then he asked the question that stayed with me. "Grandma still loves Mommy?" I took a long breath. "She does. Love doesn't always disappear when someone hurts you. But trust can." Months later, Carol had fully recovered. Sunday dinners returned, not as large as they once were, but far more peaceful. No stacks of documents covered the dining table anymore. Only homemade food, laughter, and Noah insisting on serving everyone dessert himself. One afternoon, as I repaired a loose gate in Carol's backyard, she walked outside carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. "You know," she said, smiling, "I almost took that spare key back years ago." "Really?" I thought maybe I didn't need it anymore. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the same brass key, and placed it in my hand once again. "No." She closed my fingers around it. "I know exactly who it belongs to." I looked at the quiet house behind her, then at Noah laughing as he chased the family dog across the yard. The hardest door I had ever opened hadn't destroyed my family. It had protected the people who still believed family was worth protecting.